Hi everybody, I'm Vicky. I came to one of the Mass Cell events quite a while ago and ended up chatting about my kind of MCAS journey. And I was then invited by Mass Cell Action to come and have a talk specifically about it because of a lot of what I did, and I was one of the first ones to be diagnosed on the NHS and how I kind of got there while being quite ill, and some of that might be useful to other people. I just want to reiterate, and in case anything's written in a certain way here, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional, I'm not part of the charity, I'm an advocate for the charity. And everything that I will talk about is coming from my personal experiences, things that I found useful. And I'm very aware I'm quite active within the Facebook groups. I know there's a lot of variations with how people can access things in different regions and different areas of the country. So just bear that in mind with what I'm talking about. But hopefully you will find useful bits within it for everybody. Hopefully this works. Now, I haven't done a PowerPoint presentation in quite a long time, so hopefully it'll go all right. Okay, so today in the talk, and I've actually done notes for this, which is quite good for me. I'm not generally great at this. What we're going to cover is my personal journey from being and I was really sick. I mean, I was being fed by carers. I couldn't put food in my mouth. I couldn't chew. I was really on like death's door with it. And I'm going to talk about how I got from there to where I am now, and how I managed to get that diagnosed on the NHS. Talk about the current NHS situation, where we are with that, and how that makes things quite difficult. Why you may struggle to be taken seriously by doctors, and maybe what you can do about that, and something to be aware of. Knowing your symptoms and the MCAS symptoms, recording your symptoms, advocacy, diet, and trying to work with your doctor's team, whether that's NHS or what, and how we can do that. So the key takeaways, I'm hoping, if you take notes or any other way, if you want to take anything from that, we'll cover all those areas I spoke about, and hopefully that will be some advice on the best practice I've found going through the system and give you the best fighting chance to be taken seriously. And at the end, if you'd like to ask any questions that are not covered, if you go in the chat section of the Zoom, if you write your questions in there, so if they pop up at any point and I've not covered something, or, when I've finished speaking about a section, pop them in the chat thing. And at the end, then they will be read out. Some of them will be picked out and we'll try and answer some of those if there's time. Hopefully I don't go too fast. I know I'm a bit of a talker, so hopefully I'll keep a good pace for everybody. So this is the first section, which is my MCAS journey, my experience, my symptoms, and my struggles. So looking back, a lot of this I've only learned after I've been diagnosed and after treatment started to work. The symptoms that went away were actually quite surprising, and some of them were not ones I thought were MCAS, which really I learned a lot about myself in the process. So I had symptoms all my life. I didn't know that's what it was for, but I had migraines as a very small child, daily headaches, really intense. We used to do meditation as a child, and I've always really struggled with stomach upsets, stomach acid, things like that from eating. Before I got really ill, I was an international competing athlete with a health-focused diet. I was vegetarian, but I found I had issues with that diet, so I ended up going to meat. I had a dietitian. I had absolutely like physical fitness teams around me. I had massage therapists. So I was at peak physical fitness, which I think helped me in a way, because there's a habit with some people to assume people have led quite sedentary lifestyles when they're ill, and I was an example of somebody that definitely did not do that, and the illness took that and all that away from me. I had a serious car accident in 2012 on my way to a roller derby training, and that led to me losing my ability to play sport and to exercise, and then a lot of my symptoms snowballed from there. So I think that points to the fact that I had quite a healthy lifestyle before, and I think I was keeping on top of it accidentally in a lot of ways. So I had a medication mix-up and misdiagnosis, which led to complications and serotonin syndrome in 2017. I was misdiagnosed with fibromyalgia. Now, since actually writing this, I've had a complaint go through, and it turns out it was an admin error, and my symptoms were written from another record onto mine, and I was diagnosed with fibro in an admin error, and then was denied medical care for about 6 or 7 years because they assumed it was fibromyalgia. Now we're going through a legal process to get that removed, and then hopefully, well, now I'm being taken seriously. For the last 3 years, I've really had the medical teams working with me and realised that that was a mistake. So at my worst, it resulted in me living in a daybed. I was unable to leave the house. I was vomiting daily, consistently, all the time. Anything I ate, it would just come back up. I had constant migraines. I had skin sores, swelling around my eyes. And you can see in some of these pictures. So if you look at the picture in the bottom left, that was me the week before I started MCAS medication. And when you look at my face now, it's drastically different. It was so swollen, I could barely open my eyes. And the photo on the bottom right is actually me in anaphylaxis. The doctors wouldn't believe I was in anaphylaxis until I recorded myself in anaphylaxis to prove it to them. I had home carers employed by social services, as I couldn't feed myself, I couldn't give myself water. I was in a really, really bad way. And I was ignored by doctors, told to eat less, go out for a walk, despite the fact I couldn't eat. But I was actually 18 stone, so I couldn't eat food, but I was 18 stone. And the doctor said, I mean, you can understand it in a way. You must be eating. You are a large person, as much as you're saying you're not, you are. Yeah, I'll get to that next point. The biggest drastic difference with that. So I was really in a bit of a mess. My mental health was down. I'd lost my life. My career had gone. My sports had gone. And I was in chat groups. And some of you will know Jennifer Brea. I don't know if all of you do. She had the documentary on Netflix, Unrest. Well, she saw me talking about my symptoms in ME groups because they're quite specific symptoms. And she actually messaged me and put me in her research group. She'd had a small research group of 25 people that were investigating MCAS, and she opened that up to some international members and brought about another 100 in originally. There's now like a few hundred in that research group. And we did that research group was a lot of medical evidence about MCAS, about the H1 and H2 receptors, and about symptoms, and about all the different things to do with its skin, or the, working things out. So I researched from my sickbed. I started video diaries on her suggestion. And this is so, so key. Video and photograph absolutely everything. If you know you've got a trigger, it depends how bad your triggers are. With pasta, I have a really swollen face, so I do a video of before the pasta, I do a video of me eating the pasta, I do a video an hour after the pasta, and I record the actual visible symptoms of what happens when I eat that food. Now, I wouldn't do that with soy because that produces anaphylaxis for me, so it's that's something for yourself to build up. And I have an entire album on my phone of photographs and videos that's evidence of me being ill. So when I talk to a new doctor, I show them a picture of me in anaphylaxis and have a discussion about how I'm not I've forgotten the word now, paranoid about it all, that this is a very real thing, and can we talk as if this isn't in my head. I think we all know what that conversations like when you get a doctor like that. Yes, so I moved GP practice and I went to a new GP armed with evidence and research. And I forced through an immunology referral despite resistance. So this was back before they knew I didn't have fibro, and they were still trying to say, you've just got fibro, you just need to go away, you need to go for walks, you need to stop feeling ill, ME and fibro, that kind of the way some doctors are. But I kind of armed myself with legal knowledge, so right to choose, the fact they cannot deny you a test request, the fact that if they are denying you, you need to make them write it in the notes. And I just kind of made forced through that referral basically, and it did go through. So now my immunologist originally denied MCAS was a real condition, said it's just something that's come out at the minute and it's the latest trend and it doesn't really believe in it. So I countered that with my videos, my photos and my diaries of everything I had gone through. And I informed him of the medication I needed because I'd done all the research. I'd armed myself with knowledge. I'd spoken to people about what they were on in America and what you can have in the UK and what the combinations are. And I told the doctor what tests I want, what medication I want, and the fact the only way to get diagnosed on the NHS at the moment is to have a significant improvement after starting MCAS medication. And that's not just one antihistamine, that is the whole unit, the cover, that does the S1, the HS2, something like ketotifen or montelukast, or looking at all the groups and actually being really direct with the doctors with what you want, and say that you want the trial to do this, and that if you can try this and it makes a difference, then we'll all know something. And and I managed to get him to take a risk on that. So I started medication. It was absolutely astounding. Like, the difference was so dramatic. I lost a stone of swelling within 1 week of starting medication. Within a month, I'd lost 2 stone. Within 12 months, I'd lost 4 stone. I'd lost 6 stone by summer and now lost 6.5 stone in total of swelling and fluid from allergies under my skin. So I wasn't eating and I wasn't overweight. I was actually in such a severe level of allergic reaction that I was 6 stone heavier than I should be, which is why a lot of my things mimicked fibromyalgia, like the pains all over, joint pains, problem with nerve damage and restrictions. My eyes were just, I couldn't barely open my eyes because my face was so swollen, and the swelling has gone down. I've actually got stretch marks on my face, which is really rare to get. And it only happens if you have extreme swelling or extreme loss of swelling within, a day or two. And that's how dramatic that weight change was. So I fully video diary evidenced all of this. And because of how quick I lost the weight loss, I had to go through a full MOT cancer check, because I triggered every single box for severe cancer. So I had to go through that. And then even then, when I started medication, I then started to try and learn what my triggers were, because I was still having some days that I was having reactions, but overall the symptoms were coming down dramatically. And I discovered I had a severe soy reaction. And I have milder gut reactions to all processed food generally. There's 1 or 2 E numbers that don't trigger it, but on a whole, if I see anything with E numbers, I won't touch it. I've removed everything that's processed, anything that's been through a factory, anything like that. Everything I eat is fresh and controlled now. Which the only difficulty with that is when you eat out. Or when you're out and there's only, like, I can't eat at McDonald's because it's all really bad. It's all got chemicals in it that triggers me. So, there's certain restaurants you just can't go near. I also discovered through this that I have a heart condition, which is triggered by my MCAS flares, that causes pulmonary edema, a very, very high BPM. And I can monitor my MCAS flare with a heart checker app on my phone. And if my heart rate's high and I've got my neck pain starting in my neck and the pressure's building, if I take an aspirin, and it actually brings a lot of that down, as well as some antihistamines. And I've currently actually am having my heart monitored, a 7-day monitor. That was a 2-year waiting list to get through that, because my heart has now got some long-term damage from being left so long and so sick with MCAS. And I think there is, from my experience, not as a medical professional, I think there's a strong link between monitoring, and I'd recommend monitoring your BPM and seeing how that differentiates in triggers, because that was causing a lot of the symptoms that I'd put towards other things, or like ME and things. So it turns out my migraines that I'd had my whole life and even been into hospital with were not migraines, it was anaphylaxis. So I'd even been into hospital just after one of these attacks and been told, it's just a migraine, go away. And it was only when I managed to photograph myself in anaphylaxis to prove it was real. And then I later found aspirin instantly relieves my head and neck pain when that MCAS flare starts. I assumed, because I'd had a car accident, have a spinal injury and neck injury, so I'd always assumed those pains and head pains were to do with that. But I've actually now found it's directly related to MCAS and soy. So the pain levels were very similar to that of a spinal injury when it flares up with the swelling, you know. So it's a lot of these things can be mistaken for fibro or for other injuries when actually it's food intolerances. I always assumed things like allergies was just hives and just breathing, but actually a lot of things with allergies, you can have stomach upsets, you can stop digesting food, you can be heavily constipated, and these things, when they're chronic and building up, can be related to food allergies. So my immunologist in December 2023 confirmed that he believes I have MCAS, as the result from the medication trials were astonishing. And he was like, it was like talking to a whole different doctor. So when I first met him, he thought I was just a crazy loon. And then by the end of it, he's now completely converted to this being a real disorder, because mine was so dramatic and because I'd recorded it and because I'd evidenced the entire process myself. It was the first diagnosis he has ever confirmed, and his attitude towards MCAS and my situation changed immensely, like the way he spoke to me, his help when I asked for new medications. He was very happy to try me on ketofen. There was no argument, and just having done that work and having that information to back myself up really helped with that. I'm still in recovery. I'm still losing swelling. And I've discovered after the swelling's reduced that I actually have EDS. Now, I didn't test positive for EDS before because I was so swollen, I wasn't very flexible. But when the swelling went down, it discovered that, oh no, look at all this flexibility that suddenly arrived. And things like my hands were swollen and things, and now they're not. And which is, I always find it quite a funny one, because most people, MCAS associated with EDS. So most people are diagnosed with EDS and then find MCAS, and I'm the weird one that went the wrong way around and got diagnosed with the rare bit first. So I'm finally rebuilding my career and accessing society again after 12 years of decline. So I've had some funny moments in this. I'm originally from Lancashire, so we tend to laugh at ridiculousness. It's just a cultural thing. I went into a McDonald's and I didn't know how to order food because it's all on an app now. And I hadn't been outside and into a restaurant in 10 years. So I had to ask some young people, how do you order food now? Like, how do we do this? I've had to have people to tell me how to order food in Wetherspoons because it's all on an app, and it's like, oh, this is all new. So it's been a real interest. It feels like I've been in prison for 10 years because I was housebound for 10 years. And although I had access to social media and I could see things going on, there's a lot you miss out on. So I often liken it to that. So I'm now working with a business partner I found who has EDS. She's the one that helped me identify that. And I believe she probably has MCAS too, because she has the very similar dietary issues. So we're looking to develop a diagnostic assistance tool for chronically ill patients, not just with MCAS, but with anything, fibro, ME, all these different things. And so that, because I've been working with my new doctor, who's amazing. My new GP is absolutely amazing. And I'll only see her. And we've had a lot of conversations about how hard it is for a doctor to really understand what a patient's experiencing. And they see so many people and have only got limited time. And they really want to help, but in some cases, they don't know what to do. And some doctors don't feel comfortable admitting that they don't know what to do. So she's been really great with me, and she'll listen to what I say, to what tests I ask for now. And it's been a whole different change of attitude to how I'm considered and treated with my doctor. And through talking to her as well, she's kind of said that I made this process a lot easier because I kept a track of my own tests I had researched the condition. I knew where I needed to be referred to. I knew the history of what I'd had tested. It says a lot of people struggle with that. And as a doctor, I can't read everybody's medical notes before every appointment. So we're looking to build a bit of a self-tracker on a phone. So you can log your own symptoms and log video diaries and things like that. But it'd also be lined up with a symptom tracker. So you'll be able to tick off when your symptoms, what's the most likely things, so you can talk to your doctor and have a bit of a guided conversation. And we're hoping that we can work alongside the NHS with this, because I think things like my misdiagnosis of fibromyalgia wouldn't have gone through if that was being monitored properly by somebody and we knew where the test results were going. It would have flagged that actually I hadn't been tested for that, you know, and that should have been dealt with at that point. So the NHS attitude towards MCAS and how that impacts patients. So it's very difficult at the moment. I mean, MCAS itself is quite a new and quite unknown condition. It is listed in some places and mainly abroad, but this is more towards bringing it on than the NHS. So there's no NICE, and I wrote this over summer, so I'm hoping nothing's changed. So there's no NICE guidelines for the NHS on MCAS. So that means there is no diagnostic pathway for the NHS to follow for any doctor that does not know already what the diagnostic process is. There is nothing for them to do. So they might pluck something out and think it's this or that, but there isn't a book or something they can read and follow. What is this and how do I test for it? So that's why it's really important you do that research yourself. So MCAS is listed on the CDC in America and the National Organization for Rare Diseases. So you can point doctors to those sites. So it is a thing, it is listed. It's very new, and these things take decades to sink through into, you know, especially the NHS, but a lot of medical organisations. So at the minute, there's a lot of unknowns. Doctors aren't taught about it. So it's not necessarily their fault that they might get it wrong or go the wrong way. And again, this is why it's really important that I think we arm ourselves with the knowledge ourselves so that we can really push that with doctors. There are currently no NHS-funded MCAS testing facilities in the UK. So to test for it the way the Americans do is they have a 24-hour urine test, and they check for your receptors in that, and it's done over 24 hours. And if there's a certain level, then it proves MCAS. But it isn't very reliable. There's lots of rooms for fails. You've got to go into a trigger while you're doing it. But there is 0 places to do this test in the UK. So a doctor cannot refer you for this test. MCAS can be mistaken as a mental health issue by some, because on the NHS there is a condition called MCAD, which is a mental health condition where you believe that you have allergies to lots of things. And it's more of a psychosomatic condition. And when I was first going through the process, they were trying to pull me into the MCAD, but and I nearly did, but I did my research and I came back and said it definitely isn't this. You know, but that's another reason why some doctors may push you back and say, oh no, it's not, you know, it's on the same line as what they think. And I have ME, where a lot of doctors think that ME level is, where it's psychosomatic to some level. Proving you have MCAS on the NHS requires a lot of evidencing, a long testing period. It took 2.5 years for me to evidence and keep working with doctors to prove that I'd got this condition. And you have to have dramatic improvements with the medication. That is the only current diagnostic tell that doctors have written anywhere that says that you might have it. So this is just a little bit extra in regards to, and there's a lot of studies been done on this. There's a lot of evidence behind this, but how gender bias may impact your experience. So as you can see here, quite clear, I've laid this out, the difference in women's health conditions and men's health conditions and how the diagnostic process goes. And it's nobody does this intentionally. It's just kind of something that's, you know, an unconscious bias. But men are taken more seriously, whether that's in the doctor's waiting room and in the doctor's office or in the boardroom in a business meeting. Men are taken more seriously, they're listened to more, and women are not. So it's one of those things where you have to really push and advocate for yourself, and know that the fact you're not being taken seriously isn't your fault. It is a problem with the system. And it will make your journey a lot more difficult. And again, this is why it's really important to evidence your symptoms, video it, give that, you can't deny the photo of me in anaphylaxis, but for 6 years they did, until there was a photo in front of them. And I think that's why that aspect is really important. And I'm not saying all doctors are like this, and, female doctors might not be to the same degree, but it is a problem that we have to consider. So medical gender bias affects us all. There's a severe lack of women's health research. So conditions that are predominantly seen in women, like ME, like fibro, MCAS, these things are generally a lot less funded. ME, for instance, there was more money spent on male pattern baldness research than there was in ME. And, that is just kind of an example of how that works. So yes, women's conditions are a lot less researched and funded in general. So there's a lot of things stacked against us. Bias towards downplaying women's experiences and symptoms. So pain levels, how bad my headaches were. They were put down as just headaches. They were not. They were anaphylaxis. It's these things. They're constantly told that they assume that you're maybe a little bit, dramatizing things. And women's experiences are often dismissed as psychosomatic, as I think a lot of us know. And again, none of this is your fault, but you will experience it. So it's just being aware of it, not taking it personally, and just pushing forward and knowing that there's a process, and hopefully we can get there. So again, this is why what I've been saying throughout. So the importance of arming yourself with knowledge. So NHS GPs will likely have no accurate knowledge of this condition. They're not taught it. It's not in the NICE guidelines. It's not in the NHS guidelines. It's there's very little chance that they're going to know about this. They're going to have seen it. They're going to know anything, let alone how it's tested, what the medication is. So just have that in mind. And yeah, only an immunologist on the NHS can provide a diagnostic pathway at the minute. Now, I've been on the groups and I've seen so many people being denied immunology, and I've seen some people have suggested don't bring up MCAS to start with, just bring up your symptoms, get into the room with the immunologist. And if they deny it, because my GP now is amazing, I'm trying to get an EDS diagnosis and they don't want to, she just keeps fighting it. She's like, honestly, I've shouted at this guy because he will test you, he will see you. So, keep going, even if you're denied, keep pushing. By understanding the process, you can navigate this hole in our care system. So you are at the moment going to have to know what this condition is, match it with your symptoms, record your symptoms, understand how it's tested, and constantly be giving that information. So yes, right to choose. So ADHD, I have ADHD. I was diagnosed privately age 19, but I couldn't get an NHS diagnosis until last year. I'd been trying that whole time. It was absolutely no, there's no point as a woman that, all these different barriers, even though I'd been diagnosed. And I used right to choose, which is a pathway at the minute. They might be getting rid of it because Labour are doing some crazy things. But right to choose is a piece of legislation that says if the NHS cannot test you for something in a timely manner, then you have the right for private funding on the NHS to find a private clinic, and that has to be taken through the NHS, and then you will have the medication rights through the NHS. So it's really good for you to go and research up on right to choose, and if you're being blocked from certain diagnostic tests or referrals, see about right to choose, and also insist if you've got a great doctor, they're worth absolute liquid gold. There's a lot of doctors out there who are amazing, but I know there's some doctors out there who are less so, and less understanding. And with that, if you get those denials, get them to write it in your notes that you are denying. I want you to write, you are denying this referral on my notes. And I'm not leaving until I see that that has been written. And, you know, and it's hard, I think, sometimes to do that to a doctor. But if that gets you the referral, then that gets you the referral. So you need to be assertive with your health needs. This is something I was not very good at. I will champion anyone else to the end of the earth. I will stand up on a pillbox. I will go on about other people's rights. When it comes to me, I'm like, I'm fine. Fine, I'll deal with it. So I've had to learn to be more assertive with my needs. And I think as women as well, I know there's men that have this condition, but as women, we put our needs last. We care for our families, for our children, for our husbands, you know, and actually we need to be more assertive with ourselves and not say, you know, not be all please and thank yous and I'm sorry. Be like, I want this referral and this is, you know, this is what we're having. I'm not backing down. And sometimes you have to kind of do that. Keeping your symptoms focused into those that are recordable, measurable and evidenceable. Now, we all know there are some crazy symptoms that come along with MCAS. Now, I'm allergic to my own sad tears. It's crazy. And I tell people, they're like, no way. But when I lost my dog last month and for 2 days, I was in a complete MCAS reaction. All my face was swollen. I'm not allergic to happy tears. I'm only allergic to sad tears. Now, there's a scientific reason behind that because you release histamines through sad tears. But a doctor hearing that will think, I think you're a little bit crazy there. You know, that's a bit of an odd symptom. So try and, I mean, a lot of us will have so many things, so many symptoms. Have a read through and only talk about those that are evidenceable, that you know that you can record, because that will push you through. I found as soon as you start bringing in any of the other ones, although we know they're real and we experience them, it can derail that process a little bit. And some doctors, and understandably, because there are people that go to the NHS and they do, you know, try to get diagnosed with things, so they're just battling through that process really. So this just stops you being put into that category and that you're actually taken seriously. But obviously, like in the Facebook groups and the peer support groups, you can chat about some of those symptoms. Research MCAS medication to ensure you have all the receptors and inhibitors covered, because when I was first dealing with my immunologist, he didn't know about MCAS and he only wanted to give me fexofenadine, and then I had a conversation and we increased it to a variety of different ones, and then the more I researched, I realized I was missing one, so then he agreed to put me on that. But if I hadn't done that, I would just have been in one and I wouldn't have had the dramatic effect that I've had in getting better, because I've needed all those levels taken care of. Understanding your own body, your reactions and your needs. Now, I'm neurodivergent, and I imagine there may be others in the group that are similar. So I don't necessarily feel things the way other people feel things, which has tripped me up along the road. I have a lot less inner sensory experience. So it's only when I get very, very ill that I notice there's something wrong. I tend to just put up with a lot. And things like my stomach and you know, really understanding myself compared to other people, because other people, like I can eat cheese. I eat unprocessed, very low processed Babybels, mozzarella, and it settles my stomach. For some people with MCAS, that can be a huge trigger. So this is why it's not just a case of seeing what other people have, it's really understanding yourself and how those things affect you. And standing up for your needs again. And research natural histamine levels in food, and test and record your reactions, because there were so many things I was shocked at that had histamine in, and we're all at different points on this journey. So some of you will already know this completely, you'll be following that diet, but for those that aren't, you know, basically MCAS is an autoimmune condition where we can't process histamine properly. So if histamine is introduced additionally, then that causes huge reactions. So That can be anything from various inoculations. If they've got an active ingredient in them, always talk to your doctor and get the ones that don't have the active ingredient in them, because they don't contain histamine. Things such as soy wax melts, and sprays in the air, chemicals in the air, and then obviously there's the food diaries as well. So it's just worth being aware of what things are. For instance, I didn't even realise soy was something people could be allergic to, let alone know that it's one of the highest containing histamine foods that there is, and it's quite a common one for us to react to. So, I mean, I'm still learning, but I've learned a lot about this. So evidencing and recording your symptoms, my advice from experience: keep a food diary. Now, what I'm not going to do, because I have ADHD, and the amount of people who tell me, keep a diary, write it in a diary, and I'm like, please stop. I cannot write a diary. I have probably written the contents of one book across my entire lifetime. I'm dyslexic, I have ADHD, it doesn't work for me. So you need to find what works for you. If that is a paper diary, if that is a notebook, then do that. If that is a video, because that for me, I was so poorly, I couldn't write anyway. So I do a video recording on my phone and save it, have it on a Google Drive, start building these up and do them constantly. When you're feeling unwell, when you've eaten something, video it, talk about. I've got these on a YouTube channel that I could probably send a link to, some examples, but they're talk about how you're feeling, what you're experiencing, what your life's like, and various things, and then symptoms as well. Monitor your health reactions before and after potential triggers. So remove it from your diet and record that whole process. So for instance, like me with pasta's a visible one for me. It causes my face to swell like I've been stung by a bee. So that for me, but it didn't give me the anaphylaxis. So that for me was a good one to record and evidence this swelling. Photos. Break your food right down to basics and rebuild the evidence. Now, I imagine this is going to be harder for people that can eat, because when I did this, I actually couldn't eat food. And I got to the point, the only food that I wasn't being sick was Babybel cheese. So I was having 2 Babybel cheeses a day plus water with salt and lemon juice in. That was my diet for about a year. And then I had to rebuild from that. And within that, that's how I identified my triggers, by doing it slowly and by recording it. And again, just photograph and video everything, even if it's gross. I used to have this constant stream of white, like spittle, constantly coming up, and I took photos of it, and that's where they found out I had that pulmonary edema, and it was actually the fluid coming out of my lungs. So just video everything, all the rashes. When you draw on your skin and you get that writing, do that, video it, and just build it up, and overwhelm the doctors with, look at this, look at this, look at this. It's harder for them to deny that, and say that that's psychosomatic. So create diaries and video diaries of your health at regular intervals, especially if you get the medication. Take that, record it all. It's really important you document when you start the medication, because that is evidence nobody can argue. If you have dramatic weight loss or you have symptoms go away, having that down, and showing that is invaluable. Start to monitor your BPM alongside your MCAS reactions. Now there's apps to do this now, on your phone. You can download them for free on Android, I assume on iPhone. I've got one on here, and you just put, it just uses the light off the back of your phone to detect your BPM, and it actually keeps it as a diary, and you can put notes in there. And the one I use is called heart rate. And that's quite a useful one. And yes, there's apps available for the various services above, whether that's keeping a diary, whether that's notes on your phone, videos, use those if you can. How can I advocate for myself when I'm feeling so ill? So this was how sick I was. I think it's something that people often forget in this process, that sometimes you are so ill you're not leaving the house, and how do you do that for yourself? So, and it's going to depend on your individual situation. So I don't have family, so I didn't have that ability, but I do have a really strong friends network. So get help from friends and family if you can, for appointments and for monitoring your condition, if that's helpful. If you have ADHD, if you're not very good at keeping diaries, get a friend to help you. Request an NHS advocate. There's services out there to do that. You need someone to come and talk with you in the doctors. If you're on your own, you can do that. Request an adult home care assessment from your local adult social services and request direct payments. Now, that information took me about 6 years to get because nobody wanted to tell me. DWP didn't want to tell me, the council didn't want to tell me. This is like secret squirrel stuff. But that allows you to have home care support. So that will help you with things like cooking in the kitchen if you need meal support, getting drinks, getting out and about in society if you struggle with your mobility, things like keeping your house clean, specifically from things like mold. You know, that's a service that's there. And it's different from local authority to local authority. But on the lowest universal credit PIP kind of income, that's usually funded. The more you work, the more you contribute. Write down what you need to say beforehand if speaking's hard, so you don't forget. Little bullet points is what I use, but whatever you use for you. And again, those videos and pictures are going to be your biggest tool because they can't argue with physical evidence. You know, right to choose is what I spoke about earlier. So it is a contingency on the NHS that allows you to have that private route to funding. If there is no immunology in your area, if they're denying that, then you can be referred through that. Insist any refusals are noted down on your notes and are in writing, not just verbal. You have a right to request a new GP, medical professional, clinic referral if you do not get on with that person for whatever reason. You have that right. I took too long to move doctors because I wasn't sure where to go. But the changing doctors for me was massive because different doctors are right for different people, and it's finding someone that you connect with. Back up all your requests with evidence and records of your health. I highly recommend downloading the NHS app too, because you can have access to all your medical records via the app. And you can download test results, letters, things like that. So you can use that to back yourself up. I'm going ahead of myself. I've already predicted what I was going to say. So my experience with my diet and lifestyle. So over here is the basic overview of food separated out. Now, all of these are sometimes unique to the person, which again, this is one of the things that I said, you've got to be careful what you say to somebody about MCAS, because some things are very different for different people. So for instance, I am okay with tomatoes occasionally. But some people really react to them. I'm also okay with low processed cheese, but not aged cheese. So test these yourself, because some you'll be okay with, some you'll react with, but these tend to be the ones that are good. And when it says coffee, it doesn't mean freeze-dried instant. It means beans ground up, like avoid any process. So taking micro control over your environment and diet, getting rid of any mold, getting rid of any triggers, making sure you're all right with your detergents, and really monitoring your diet. One size does not fit all. So what worked for me, what's worked for somebody else may not work for you. It's about finding what works for you. And this is a lifestyle change. This is not a diet. As sad as that is, I cannot now go anywhere and eat gravy in a restaurant. And I'm Northern, and gravy is a part of my traditional heritage and culture. And I now have the only version of soy-free gravy in existence in bulk in my kitchen. And that's the only gravy I'm allowed now. And as sad as that is, I cannot cheat because it's got soy in it, and that gives me anaphylaxis. And I kind of take that view with most of the foods, even if the reaction is less severe. Because the more you take control of your diet and are on the medication, the more recovery you're going to get. Diaries will be essential in tracking your potential triggers, just in case you forget, and talking about what you've eaten, how you felt afterwards. Like, really record this stuff and look back and reflect on it. Medication is only one aspect of treatment, so don't expect to just take a load of pills and then you're going to be better. You have to take that work on yourself, and it is hard. Without diet change, you will not feel a long-lasting recovery. It is a commitment. Right, and I think this is one of our last slides. So hopefully if you've only got any questions, anything I've missed, you can start typing them in. So working together with your medical team moving forwards, this is my advice. Now it's very difficult, and I think that we can all have a moan about, I mean, we're British, we can have a moan about anything, and we'll all have a moan about doctors sometimes, but we need to really understand that the majority of doctors do want to help us. They do want to understand, and they do want to resolve these problems. You know, and with the right evidence, with the right backup, they will understand that, you know, we're not trying to make ourselves out to be sicker than we are, that this is genuine. Although medical professionals will want to help you, many will not have heard of this condition and they will not have had training on it. So any prerequisite opinions they had on this that they've heard, you know, like man down the pub stuff, but the doctor's edition, you know, they're going to have that in mind. So we need to be the experts at the moment on this condition and on our symptoms. Take control of your own health and medical research. Don't think that the doctors are going to help you. They're going to help you get the medication, but they're not going to know what this condition is. They're not going to give you advice on diet. They're not going to tell you about the symptoms because they do not know. You know, if you do find one, it's very, very rare. But hopefully if we work with them and we try and keep them on side, and, you know, sweeten them up a little bit, then they'll be more, you know, open to helping and supporting you. Use your diaries and tools to illustrate your situation, and do that work for them. Be polite but firm with your needs. So don't, you know, and it is hard. I mean, I've had emotional breakdowns in doctors' offices. I think a few of us probably have, you know, and it is hard to do that. But I think it is just understanding that the majority of doctors, they probably they could have had a bad day. They could have had someone in just before you that's, you know, had a really heart-wrenching situation. You just don't know. So, you know, always be aware that, you know, that being polite, but also not taking no for an answer. It's a fine line. And try and work with your medical team. If you can get them on board and get them working with you, you're going to have an easier journey than if you, and I'm a bit of a punk. I can be really difficult and stubborn, but I know in some situations that will make it worse. So sometimes you kind of just got to try your best and work with them. And we need to take more ownership of our own medical care and use the NHS as a tool to assist us. And I think this goes for across the board in the country, and talking to doctors, they agree like this. And I think that MCAS is one that we really have to do that. We really have to monitor that and understand that ourselves, and just use the NHS as they're not going to help you. They're not going to give you advice and support with MCAS, but they're a way to get the medication that we need on prescription. That's what the tool is. Yes, I think that's everything.